Hello and welcome to Console Shock. We're back again with another episode, number 17. And as
17.
usual, 17 episodes. Not 15, not 16, not even 18, mate. 17.
No.
Also known as 16 plus 1. So, yeah, it's me, as usual, Trev. And I'm not going to say your full name this time, Stu, because you get...
No, you don't have to say my full name.
It's just Stu. You're just Stu.
Why don't you read out my insurance number?
I would love to, mate. I would love to.
Maybe my date of birth.
Yeah, I think that's
and what's my PIN code as well for my. That's what you want to read out. All that. That's what people want to know.
I don't know why you gave me all this stuff. To be fair, you're asking for trouble.
I trust you.
Yeah. Well, I can tell people that he's a bloke that works in a shop.
Playnation Games.
What kind of shop is it?
Console Shock, sponsored by Playnation Games.
We don't mention it much, do we? This shop of yours.
Well, the customers come first.
They do, in many more ways than one. When they see your games, for sure. Woohoo, giggity. Stu has Console Shock, has Playnation Games, the best and only retro game shop in the UK, possibly Europe.
That is right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Before we go into our topic this week, which Trevor will explain, I just want to quickly talk about a little bit of admin, a little bit of, that type of stuff. So, right, we've got an interweb, an internet site. It's on the www, that stands for World Wide Web.
Internet,
so, HTTP, type this in, HTTP //www.consoleshock.net. Or if you've used the internet any time in the last 10 years, just type in consoleshock.net, not .com, .net. And we've got our YouTube channel, which would be great if you guys can subscribe to that as well. And then we've also got our Facebook page. But if you go to consoleshock.net, you can find the Facebook page, you can find the YouTube page, and subscribe to all of them, just so you get stuff first. And what I've actually started doing on the Facebook page, the website, I've started putting on there good videos from other YouTubers that we like. So we've got King Justice on there. I'm going to put some from Oliver Harper, a few from
the retro guys.
Yeah, talking about the Amiga. We're putting some GameSack. We're going to get some of those. Trevor, can you call up GameSack and get them on this podcast?
Why the hell do you think people of that caliber would ever want to be on this poxy thing? I don't even want to be on it.
Actually, the title and the theme of this podcast, not video podcast, is very much like an episode that GameSack would do.
Yeah, we're going back to the old. Well, it wasn't the old format, but before we had a few guests come on that were kind enough to dedicate their time, it was just me and you, wasn't it, Stu? And what we would normally do, we would talk about one of them video game consoles. More of them in subsequent episodes, but we're going to have a little bit of a segue to an interesting topic that we both are interested in. Yes, it is kind of a GameSack type vibe. And that is unlikely ports. So what is a port, Stu?
Well, a port is traditionally a game might come out in the arcade, and it's, with the arcade, you've got sort of almost a limited power, really, to make the game however you want it. But then it gets ported to other machines, tends to be in the home or other portable machines. And you might think, well, actually, how does that X machine play the arcade machine? Or a game might have come out on the PC and then they convert it to play it on the Game Boy. So you might think, well, actually, how does that even work? That shouldn't be able to do that game. So that's the theme of this episode. It's just games that they really shouldn't be on that system, but somehow through clever programming and good use of memory and maybe sticking a few extra chips in the cartridge, the game can play.
Exactly.
And some of them are obviously going to be better
Yes.
than others.
And it's interesting because the actual port that you end up with at the end might share absolutely nothing in common with the original, even if it's from a similar sort of system. And they could also be, you mentioned the arcade, where many sort of ports came from, because often the console or even computer that they went to might have shared some of the similar hardware of that console. A good example is the sort of Mega Drive shared a lot with the System 16.
Oh, really?
Sega arcade board, yeah, the Outrun and stuff was on. So that was a little bit closer what you would get in the home. But there were times when it was just maybe a game that came out on another home system, whether it's the PC or something like that, and then would need to be converted to the other system. And it's not a case of just copying and pasting the code. And that's because they have different CPUs that run at different speeds, different types, and all that kind of crap. But we'll go into more detail about that when we get to the individual games. So I'm going to kick off with one. It's actually a favourite of mine, even though it's kind of shit. I want to know what you think about this. And that is Doom on the Super Nintendo.
Oh,
that was a good one, wasn't it? So the SNES had a few, actually. When it was getting to nearer the end of its life, it was in its sort of twilight years. So we're talking like 95, 96, 97. It got a few of these weird ports, and one is Doom. Now, for me, as a kid, with a Super Nintendo, it was the only way I could play Doom, because the original version of Doom was on the PC. It was on the PC, and in those days, in sort of 94, 95, you still needed about £1,000 worth of PC, didn't you?
Well, exactly, yeah. Doom needed a hell of a lot of power. Well, actually, a lot of power. I won't say a hell of a lot. But it was, I remember Doom coming out, and I don't know, obviously, I imagine you're going to mention this, but it was missing a few things. I think that's right to say.
Doom.
Doom.
One of the best games ever made. Wait, you mean the SNES version?
The SNES version
the PC version. The PC version, well, it was kind of rubbish.
Had everything.
Yeah, so basically, the Super Nintendo was £100, I think, by 95, wasn't it? It was
Something
in
like that, yeah.
its career, and for some reason they managed to. I think it was Williams banged out, somehow squeezed that game from £1,000 PC onto £100 16-bit console. It did cheat a little bit though. It's got a support chip inside it. The Super Nintendo loves doing that, doesn't it? Sticking the old chips in the cartridge. Like, the base unit can't handle this, so we're going to shove a bunch of chips in the cartridge. And that's what it did with this. It's got the Super FX2 chip. What is that, Stu? What were these Super FX chips?
Well, it's just basically sort of an extra little, I want to say CPU or GPU or bit of RAM or just something
CPU,
extra in there, just to make, give these games sort of a chance of. I think that's also. I'd also say there's a little bit of copy protection in there by using all these extra chips as well.
You could be right. Basically an accelerator, wasn't it? Like with a platform we love very much, the Amiga, where you could bolt on an extra CPU card, and it'll make it'll run faster. With the Super FX chip, it was inside the cartridge. There was other games that had the Super FX chip as well. I think Star Fox was the most famous, or Star Wing as it was to us in the UK. That had the Super FX chip, and that allowed you to play 3D polygon games. At about a terrible frame rate, admittedly, but we didn't know any better then, did we? When we were sort of 10 or 11, it was just like, it looked awesome.
That's amazing.
But yeah, they managed to get Doom running on it, and looking at it now, I actually dug it out and I played it on the real cartridge on a real Super Nintendo.
Hasn't it got no music?
It has got music. It's you're thinking of the
Jaguar version.
The Jaguar has no music, yeah.
But it's in a smaller window, isn't it?
In a very small window. It's not like the 32X, which has like full screen, but the actual gameplay is in a window with a border. It's literally just a black border and a small window. Now, on modern TVs, you can get around that by using the zoom function on the TV. So I can do that on my SNES plugged into a HD TV to blow it up, and I've got an RGB SCART cable, which is pretty damn good quality picture, very clean picture. But yeah, it's just very pixelated. The frame rate is really poor, which means there's always quite a bit of lag. upon pressing a button and then walking around, and that also means you'll often get caught a little bit behind when you see an enemy. And they'll probably get a chance to shoot you before you shoot them, because it's just too slow for you to see something with the screen, the frame rate, and hitting the fire button. There is a delay of about half a second.
Really?
Doesn't sound like
What
much.
about another question is, obviously that game is designed for mouse and keyboard, and you're playing it all with obviously a joypad. So how does that feel? You've mentioned
there's already that lag. Yeah, there's already that lag. In terms of the layout, it's not bad. I mean, you've got the L and the R trigger work really well to strafe. And the button layout's really good. There's no issues with that at all. The D-pad's pretty good to move. Obviously, this is before you had sort of mouse look, where you would use or the right stick to look up or the left stick to look up and down. You were just constantly facing forward, and you didn't need to do that because you weren't really in 3 dimensions. But also, like, the floors and the ceilings aren't texture mapped. The walls are, but the floors and the ceilings aren't. And all the enemies only have a single sprite which is facing you directly, so they're always kind of facing you. There isn't like a slight to the side sprite or anything like that, probably to save space on the cartridge. But actually, despite that, it's still playable. Some people go a bit over the top and say it is literally unplayable. It's horrible. It's not at all. In fact, it has more stuff in it than the Jaguar and 32X versions. It's got all the levels from the PC version of Doom, which I believe the Jaguar and 32X Doom actually don't have. They've got some chopped out. And also, I think the Spider Demon, or the Cyber Demon even, and another bad guy, are also that are missing from the Jaguar and 32X versions, are actually in the SNES version. So it's actually got some extra things that aren't in the supposedly better versions. And of course, the music is really good.
Right, okay.
So yeah. Did you ever play
just
that?
for the music.
Did you ever play that when it came out?
I can't say I did. No.
You remember it coming out?
Trevor, are you moving? I can hear myself.
Yeah, I think I've got a bit of an echo as well. God, we're doing well with this sound thing, aren't we, on this show?
It's perfect.
Anyway, yeah. So actually, I know I found out what monsters are in there. It's the Cyber Demon and the Spider Demon that aren't in the Jaguar and 3DO and 32X versions. So yeah, that's interesting. But that was a great. Obviously, not up to the same scratch as the other versions, but running on a £100 games console in 1995. If you take it in that context, that's pretty darn impressive.
I think it's quite funny now that I'm sort of boring people going off topic, but that's always what we seem to do. There's this whole thing on the internet where, you know, people get Doom running on a fridge, people get Doom running on do you know the new iMacs?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of those. On that sort of touch bar on there, where on your MacBooks, that's right. You've got that touch bar, and it has all different buttons on there for, you know, depending what software you're using. Apparently, you can get Doom running on that now.
Yeah, and it's obviously that will look kind of weird because it's a very wide sort of aspect.
Very wide and very shallow.
But apparently it works. Yeah, actually, that would be interesting.
Well, my first pick of a game that is shouldn't really be on this system, but they managed to, I don't know, had a go at making it work. I think that's fair to say. Is Sega Rally on the Game Boy Advance. Now, I'm a huge fan of Sega Rally. Loved it in the arcade. Right. I loved it on Sega Saturn. Didn't really like Sega Rally 2. Didn't really like Sega Rally on the Xbox 360. Couldn't get my head round it. I actually quite like the PSP version, but the version I just think is a huge mess of pixels is on the Game Boy Advance, Sega Rally on the Game Boy Advance. And at one point, there seemed to be this whole sort of genre of games. Things like Medal of Honor came out on the Game Boy Advance, which is a huge mess of pixels.
But there was others that were good. Doom was good on the GBA.
Really? Well, I don't really remember playing that one either too much, but thinking back, I certainly do remember it. And I know it had more power, obviously, than Super Nintendo, but it was, in essence, a 2D machine. So, you know, the thought of playing, faux 3D games or 3D games on it. They were just, I don't know. It shouldn't really have been on that. It just didn't feel good at all.
So was it based on the original arcade machine, or was it some kind of
well, it was. No, I
clone?
think it was based on the original arcade machine.
You had like the
but
forest and like the mountain sort of stage and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, I'll be honest with you, I'm going more from sort of memory than I played it yesterday to sort of know all the stages. But I don't know, it just didn't look very good.
So you slapped it in your GBA, hoping for something near with the Saturn game is brilliant. I absolutely love Sega Rally, and it was just nothing like it. And you were like, "What the hell have they done?"
Well, it just felt, you haven't quite got the, you can't quite rotate the car as well and power slide around the corners, and it was, I keep on saying the same thing, but it was just
disappointment.
It was just disappointment. It's like, God, it should really be. Have they? And I say at the same time, they had things like Need for Speed came out, the same type of sort of 3D sort of pixelated graphics, and I think that's my main. I've got no problems with racing games. Things like F-Zero on the Game Boy worked really, really well, but
I think that was its strength, wasn't it? Those 2D sort of Mode 7 style SNES kind of remake type one.
Right, but
I think trying to shoot on a 3D game didn't work.
Was just sort of condensed down so much that your car was made out of 50 pixels or something, and it wasn't really good. Do you ever remember playing it, or?
No, I never played it, but it was funny because the Game Boy Advance didn't have a lot of luck with Sega when they tried to make some kind of, not necessarily, sort of a retro game that had already been out for a number of years on the Game Boy Advance. I remember they did maybe a Mega Drive compilation, I think, like a classic collection kind of thing, and there were quite poor versions of like Golden Axe, and I can't remember what it was now. It was like something like Sega Collection, and it wasn't great, and you can like the sound wasn't quite there, and what was it called? There was like a Genesis collection or Mega Drive collection. And it just, Sega Smash Pack. Yeah, that's it. Sega Smash Pack. And it had like Sonic Spinball, Golden Axe, and Echo the Dolphin. So not the best choice. I mean, Sonic Spinball?
I remember the Sonic Advance games. I did enjoy them.
Yeah,
they were really good.
Well, that's because they kind of made those from scratch, didn't they? So that worked.
Yes, yeah.
But, this Sega Smash Pack, it was a bit naff. It was not as good as the original Mega Drive originals, which you would think it'd be able to do fairly well. And then you also had Sonic the Hedgehog, like the actual Mega Drive, the first game. Not a remake, it was actually just, I'm not sure if they emulated it. I'm not sure if it could emulate a Mega Drive, but they basically sort of ported over. So port Sonic the Hedgehog 1 onto the GBA, and again, it just wasn't as good. So it was a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to Sega sort of porting old games over to the Game Boy Advance.
Okay, what's your next one?
So I got I mentioned the SNES had a few of these near the end of its life. So another one was Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the Super Nintendo. Do you remember that one?
I do. Yeah, we've had that in the shop a few times.
Oh God, I want to buy it.
Do you?
I really want it. Yeah. What, did you just get the cart, or have you got a mint condition one coming or anything?
No. We in the past we've had it in. I don't believe we've got it in at the moment, but keep on checking the Facebook site. It's one of those games where it was, Super Street Fighter 2 was like the pinnacle of Street Fighter games, and then everyone went on to the next generation, the Sega Saturn, the PlayStation 1, and then of course you got the Alpha games that came out for those. And they actually did one of the Alpha games for the Super Nintendo, and there's so much more to it.
It didn't get the first one, weirdly enough, and I didn't think it would really. I wasn't expecting a Super. No one was really saying where's the Super Nintendo version, because we just all thought, well, it's probably not powerful enough, and the sort of 16-bit generation is now coming to an end. Now we've got the PlayStation. It was a good year in to the life of the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn. But yeah, randomly, is near the end of 1996, they just released a Super Nintendo version, and it's quite good. Again, obviously, if you directly compare it to the PlayStation or the Sega Saturn version, it doesn't look great, but it's maybe not 90, but it's probably 70%.
Yeah.
Of the PlayStation version and the Saturn version. It's missing some frames, and there is actually, there's a support chip inside the cartridge. So emulators have had a bit of trouble getting this working, and I think if you had an EverDrive cartridge, one of those, don't know what your thoughts on them are, being someone that owns a retro game shop, but
I mean, we cater to collectors, and anyone can. I've probably said this before. Anyone can go on the internet and download 600 games, every game for the Super Nintendo. But it's collectors who want the original gear. And from my point of view, is there's always going to be little kids that want to get into these old games, but they can't afford your likes of Super Metroid and Secret of Mana and all the the real expensive games for the Super Nintendo. So I've got no real problem with it. It's got its place, and I think that's fair enough to say.
The Super Nintendo, I mean, obviously, as a collector, and you would know this as a fellow collector, it's not cheap at all. Any game is you're looking at just for a okay Mega Drive Super Nintendo game. You're looking at 30 quid in a box. The only ones that are really less than that are basically sports games. I mean, I picked up ISS Deluxe for 10 quid in the box, not mint or anything or sealed, but just in a okay, good condition box with the manual. That was 10 quid. That's as cheap as you'll get. Even just like, Theme Park, which is a multi-plat game, that's 25 quid, 30 quid. Worms, 20, 30 quid. Lemmings, 20, 30 quid. And often you'll find the Mega Drive version of those games and the multi-plats. There's not that much difference between the two systems. The sound might be a bit better and there'll be more colors on the Super Nintendo, but nothing really dramatic. In fact, some of the sports games on the Super Nintendo are worse than FIFA, especially is worse on the SNES than it is on the Mega Drive. Funnily enough,
I think the Mega Drive, the processors runs faster. They always talked about what was it, Mega Power, and I don't know.
Yeah, the what's it called, blast processing thing.
Blast processing. I was going to say hyper threading. I don't even know if it means anything, but
it's the early version of it. Yeah. But you'll find the Mega Drive versions of the same games will be a lot cheaper. And I don't really know why. I don't know if it's kind of like the Nintendo mystique effect.
Exactly.
Or it might just because as well, I mean, they come in these horrible boxes. Well, I was almost saying that the boxes, the artwork is great and everything, but in terms of how durability, they're rubbish. Whereas the Mega Drive cases are brilliant. So you'll really struggle to find a battered version of a game. The only thing you often get with Mega Drive games is the instructions are missing. Like for the life of me, I can't find Turtles Tournament Fighters with the bloody instructions, or Hyperstone. I've got Hyperstone, but I'm trying to find a manual. For it. Yeah, I've had it for years. I got it when it was still relatively cheap, but it hasn't got a manual, so I'm looking for a manual. Oh. People charge 10 quid for the manual for that game now, so. If you want it complete, you've got to if you wanted a complete, someone just selling a complete version of it, you're looking at 70, 80 quid for it. But anyway, yeah, we digress. Yeah, I can imagine it's expensive in your shop when you do have a copy of SF Alpha.
Well, Alpha 2, yeah. I mean, usually it's unboxed, and I don't want to start quoting prices, and people, oh no, I've seen it for less, I've seen it for more,
Yeah. You'll get that, I'm sure.
But we usually do it for £30-40, something like that, and it always sells pretty quickly. But it's quite interesting because it had so much sort of data. It was actually the only SNES game, I think I'm right in saying, it almost had sort of loading screens. It was there was always a little pause between between the bouts or something like that.
It says fight, and then it pauses for a couple of seconds, and then you can actually start fighting. Really interesting.
That's right. That was really odd to me.
Yeah. With this support chip that's inside it, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it.
I'm on the Wikipedia page.
Me too. Who can get it first? Come on. So it had an
Oh,
enhancement chip that helped with compression of the graphics, basically, which meant you could have
the
more animation.
S/DD1 chip for on-the-fly graphics decompression.
And it was only
There
in
you
2
go.
games then, it seems. SF Alpha 2 and Star Ocean. So yeah, and as I mentioned, it's difficult for like Z snares and I think SNES 9X. I actually don't know if they can emulate the STD1 at the moment. I think they might actually. They can. So you could probably emulate it. But yeah, it means that an EverDrive cart, you need to have all these chips in there to be able to run the ROM of it if you pop it in your cartridge.
That's right. Yeah.
But I'm looking to get a copy of that. But like I said, very expensive, even just a loose cart. I mean, that is a reasonable price, in my opinion, what you charge when you get one in.
Well,
But
there you go.
eBay looking at 60, 70 quid, and for a one in a box, don't even go there, girlfriend. It's quite expensive. It's a good port. I'm a big Street Fighter fan. A lot of people say don't even go near it. It's horrible. It's not at all. Very playable. Looks fairly similar to the other console versions. The sprites are a bit smaller, few less frames of animation, but nothing that the gameplay is the same. The music is terrible though. The music is absolutely terrible. It's kind of all sounds very lounge. Well, the alpha games have this weird like lounge music, which is really, really jarring, going from Street Fighter 2, which is kind of rock, kind of cool sounding music, to this terrible lounge music that they kind of did. But it sounds even worse than on the Super Nintendo. Well, I don't know if that's because there was so little, processing available to handle the music that that was the thing that they nerfed a little bit. But you know what? If it means you get the rest of it pretty good, that's probably a good thing. But yeah, Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the SNES. That's my next one. So, Stu, you got another one?
I've got one here actually, carrying on the theme of Street Fighter. I remember Street
Yes.
Fighter 2 that came out on the ZX Spectrum,
Oh, of course. Yeah. And
and
the
that
Commodore 64.
well, yeah, all of those machines
Yeah.
got a version of Street Fighter 2, and I remember I did pick it up once, and it was right
Was it on a
first.
couple of tapes? Was it on a couple of
No,
tapes?
I don't. No, I don't believe it was. It was
Yeah.
certainly on a case of, play the tape for 10 minutes to load it in, choose your character, then turn over to the second half of, what depending on what character you're chosen and what level you're on. Turn the tape over to the second half, press play again, and then you get into your fight. And of course, you only had sort of one button or sort of 2 buttons, I guess, if you use the keyboard. And it was it was just it's one of those things where the Spectrum really didn't excel in these games. And from memory, it had a very small screen. And for example,
I think
if
the
you're
sprites
on
look good. They looked at the sprites.
well,
Look good
that was what was good about the
when it moved.
Spectrum. It had large sprites,
Yeah.
but it also had everything was one color. So I
Yeah.
think one level was all blue, one level was all green, and it was just a real sort of odd mess of okay, great. They're really trying to just try and get a little bit of money into the studio here. US Gold, whoever published it,
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
and for me, it was no. Load of arcade like Ghouls and Ghosts, or there were good arcade games from Capcom that translated well to the Spectrum, but Street Fighter 2 was, in my opinion, it was just one step too far.
It was a bit of a money grab, I think, from US Gold, wasn't it? I think they got the license and they just pumped it out on anything. And I know you're a bit of a Spec chum, but I'm more of a Commodore 64 sort of fan, because that was the first video game system I ever played. But it's on that as well, and it's again pretty rubbish. I mean, the C64 tended to have blockier graphics anyway than the Spectrum. I think it had a bit of a lower resolution, but it's still pretty bad. It looks okay in screenshots, but in fact, the most disappointing one is the Amiga. It's better than
that was
obviously
the first game I had on the Amiga. It was the first game I had, and to be honest with you, I absolutely loved it because I was like, "Oh my god, I got Street Fighter at home! Oh wow!" And of course,
it looked more like the arcade, of course, and the Super NES version, which was the main one at the time. It's better if you plug a Mega Drive pad in, and play it with that than with a joystick. You get an extra button then,
Oh,
but it's very jerky. It's the sound is terrible, and obviously there's a lot of loading. I mean, but again, for me, that was a version that I also grew up with. I think I got the Mega Drive version later, which is obviously way better. But yeah,
saying that though, the Amiga with the power it had, it could have had the best version of Street
I don't
Fighter
really
2.
get. It was just,
You know,
if
so
Capcom did it themselves. Well, actually, there's Super Street Fighter 2 for the Amiga 500,
oh, is
and
there?
that's really good. Yeah, it's
Oh,
weird. It's got a very weird history on the Amiga. There's two versions of Super Street Fighter 2. There's like an A1200 version and an A500 version. The
right.
500 version is very good, and it's probably the best Street Fighter port for the Amiga. It's way better than the first Street Fighter 2 on the Amiga. It's very odd looking. It's kind of very small sprites, but they are really smooth. There's all the animations there. The music is still a bit naff, but it's got all the characters from Super Street Fighter 2. So yeah, if you got an Amiga 500 and you want to play Street Fighter 2, hunt down Super Street Fighter 2, not Turbo, just Super Street Fighter 2. It's actually quite good. A lot of disc swapping though, so you might want to bang out old WinUAE and play it that way. Or get the old what's it called? The thing that used to run games off an SD card on an Amiga.
WHD load.
WHD load, yeah, that's it. Grab a copy of that, and then you're onto a winner. But yeah, otherwise, that is the version to get, and avoid the first Street Fighter 2. It's all right, but there's also, I mean, Mortal Kombat was pretty good on the Amiga, 1 and 2. Yeah. I think it was basically the Mega Drive version that they sort of ported across. And so it lost.
Still had the same processor, didn't it? So
it did, yeah. It was Probe as well, wasn't it? Who did the Mega Drive version? So,
that's right,
that's actually all right. That's another one. So
what's your next one?
I've got another Super Nintendo one, Stu. Can you handle that? Yeah.
I love the Super Nintendo.
Prefer it to the Mega Drive?
I don't know.
All about the same.
It's difficult. I'll change.
I have moods. At the moment, I prefer collecting for the Mega Drive because it's a lot cheaper, and I think they're also more common in the UK because it was just more popular. I don't know what the figures were, the sales figures, but I'm pretty sure they sold more Mega Drives in the UK, and it's just cheaper, and it's just But then I have days when I prefer the Super Nintendo, and I think this is the best 16-bit console. Anyway, the next one is SimCity 2000 on the Super Nintendo. Thoughts? Just let that sink in for a minute. Let that sink in. SimCity 2000 Super Nintendo.
That was a cracking game.
Yeah. So you had the first one.
On the PC.
So again, so once again, it's like Doom, isn't it? Where SimCity 2000, despite the fact it was a city building game, obviously, everyone knows about this game. It still needed probably a pretty good 486 PC. You're still looking at 600, 700. Yeah.
Oh, it needed more than that. You needed more than that.
You could be right. Wikipedia quick. It basically needed a powerful PC. It was a great game, obviously, on the PC. It got ported to everything. But you wouldn't have expected a Super Nintendo version. Again, very late in the Super Nintendo's life. I think we're looking at, again, 1995. But it's actually all right. Very bizarre thing, though. Doesn't support the Super Nintendo mouse.
And that's, again, it's got control issues because, you want to play SimCity with a mouse. Otherwise, it's just up, right, enter. That's all you're just doing, just up and down. And it just makes, playing the game such a chore where it was really designed for the mouse. So I don't know what the Super Nintendo had a mouse. Other games used it. Well, actually, have I just made that up?
Mario Paint, obviously.
Mario Paint.
One. I think a few other games used it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So if other games used it, why shouldn't that game use it? And it's just, I think they really missed a trick there. To, I think they were worried that people wouldn't buy it if they didn't have a mouse. I don't know. But
I mean, the game was crying out for a mouse support. It was that you can play it with the pad. There's nothing. It's playable and you get used to it, but obviously it won't be as fast when you got to like navigate through tiles, and especially when you have to drag out, you know, a stretch of road or whatever, or sort of, you know, residential land, that's a little bit clunky. But again, it's all right. It's not the version you would go to if you've got a few of them to hand. Not even on the console.
No.
I think the Sega Saturn version is probably the best console version. Obviously, the PC version is the one you want to do, or even basically anyone that's on a computer. There's quite a good Amiga version as well, wasn't there? But yeah, it's not the go-to version. But to be honest, it's got most of the stuff is in there. The only things it doesn't have, riots and volcanoes are removed. That might not be a bad thing. There isn't a difficulty setting, so it's just kind of a sort of a medium level of difficulty. And there's only one newspaper. But they're not really big omissions that are breaking the game or anything.
No, it had the the essence of the game there. So I think I'm sure it's a good version. And if you're a fan of SimCity, you'll get over all of these things. Maybe not quite the mouse issue, but I mean, the original SimCity did very well on the Super Nintendo. It was almost like a launch title, wasn't it? But of course, that was a lot more. That was a lot more sort of basic. Whereas the Super Nintendo one, of course, you had to. I don't know. You had almost like subways you had to make, and there was just a lot more to it. So you
have to do the waterworks and everything on the 2000. And yeah, so there was also a lot more scrolling around the screen, and because it was in a sort of an isometric view, which is a little bit more taxing for the Super NES to sort of render, it was a bit slower to navigate around your city than just the sort of the more primitive looking. It still looked great, the original SimCity, but the sort of more primitive looking sort of straight over the top view, which actually I think works a little bit better for the sort of 2D SimCity because it's just very, very fast to navigate around. But yeah, SimCity 2000, good game. Check it out. Again, not the one you're going to go to as your main one, but works pretty well on the Super Nintendo. So Stu, you got another one?
I've got one. Now, I remember I was a big fan of this game on the PC. And at one point, I always liked playing, relaxing in the evening, laying in bed before I went to sleep, playing a game on a Game Boy or on a Game Boy Advance, on a DS or a PSP. So years and years ago, I got Grand Theft Auto for the Game Boy Color. Now, this game, I love Grand Theft Auto on the PC, and in my mind, I thought, well, it's top down, so the Game Boy can do that. Well, I was a little bit, couldn't quite do that.
Yeah,
so I got it.
Like the first two GTAs, wasn't it? A little bit.
Well, yeah, it was basically GTA 1. So the original one where you went around, you had the squeaky, go and get this fella, go and do this, and
quests all over the place.
Yeah, it was just go and do this, go and do that. But of course, it's one of the first open world games where you can really do what you want. But the main problem with the Game Boy version, from what I remember, was it didn't have other cars. It was almost like you would just drive along. There wouldn't be much going on. So it had the game there, but
probably couldn't handle.
When you went to a set piece, it had a few cars. Yeah. But when you're just driving around, there just wasn't, things going on with the game, and
it was lifeless.
And I think that's fair to say. So very quickly, I realised that actually this is not the game for me, really.
Yeah.
Do you ever remember playing it, or?
I remember it coming out, and then I think they also did sort of on the DS. They kind of made, is it Chinatown Wars, which again was like a top-down, wasn't it?
They did the Grand Theft Auto game also on the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
So they did it on the Game Boy Color, and then there was something that they called it, I don't know, GTA, and it might have been based on GTA 2 or something like that. But it was I'm looking on the Wikipedia page, and it doesn't say Game Boy Advance, but I swear I've seen that.
I think it was GTA 2, wasn't it? It was just Grand Theft Auto on the G.
Oh no, for the game series Game Boy Advance, see Grand Theft Auto Game Boy Advance. So it did come out on there, but the actual
I think around that period.
The Game Boy version, and it was for the Game
Yeah.
Boy Color, so it was all in color. It was just poor.
I think for me, I had a PSP, and you know, obviously this is not that it didn't run alongside the GBA, but as they sort of did cross over a little bit. And obviously there was Grand Theft Auto on that, Liberty City Stories, and that was friggin' great. It was just mind blowing to have what was basically Grand Theft Auto 3 on a handheld that you could stick in your pocket. And that was a real. It was. You can't really say it's a port, because it wasn't Grand Theft Auto 3. It was in the same city. But when you compare that to what you could do on the Game Boy, it was basically, there wasn't really any comparison. But I guess it did work on what they made for the Game Boy and the DS did kind of work for that platform, didn't it?
Well, actually, the DS version of Chinatown Wars, Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars, was actually a really good game.
Yeah,
It felt as engrossing as like a main series Grand Theft Auto game, and it had a really good use of the touchpad and things like you had to pick locks, or you had to open a safe, or you had to circle around. So there's little fun things to do like that. So I'd say that was a really good version. I didn't really play the Game Boy Advance version one very much, but yeah.
Talking of which, Grand Theft Auto 4 is now back compatible with the Xbox One.
Oh, is it?
Yes, you can plonk your GTA 4 disc in from the 360 and you can play it on an Xbox One now.
Oh, well, was that announced today?
Today, I think, yeah. And that includes Liberty City Stories, not Liberty City, so episodes from Liberty City works as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I completed that, but I never did the expansion parts.
Yeah, I've completed 4, but I started episodes from Liberty City on this is the PC version. I've only got a few missions into it. They're quite short. Well, both of them combined, probably the two different episodes make up about 2/3 of a main story. But so they did a good job with GTA, I think. But there was actually a very similar game on the DS called Cop the Recruit,
really?
Which was like an open world 3D city game. Yeah, it's not very good though.
Oh.
Yeah, but look it up. It's quite interesting. It was like an open world 3D city on a Nintendo DS. But it's very choppy. The controls are, because the frame rate is quite low. It's obviously struggling to render, an entire city. It wasn't really built for that, and it's just with no analog stick makes it a bit clunky to walk around in an open world sort of a game like that. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you wanted to see what they might have done if they tried to do a 3D GTA like on the PS2, Cop the Recruit, you look that up and you better see what it might have been like.
I think they did a driver game on the Game Boy Advance.
They did actually, yeah.
Yeah, so I can
a remake PS1 version.
That was like Sega Rally, and that was
the
just
same
been
sort of
another, a graphic mess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just you couldn't probably see where you're going and things like that, and I imagine it was sort of marketed towards mothers who wanted to buy the game for.
It's almost like
the children couldn't quite afford that.
It's almost like the developers got a little bit excited because they're like, "Wow, we've got a handheld that's like finally, broken, a clean break from the Game Boy kind of 8-bit era of handhelds. Let's try and shoehorn all kinds of crap onto it." And that's kind of how we ended up with that was with the GBA, but the DS was that was an era of handhelds where we actually had anything that was near like a PlayStation in terms of power, so you could actually put 3D games on it. I think the PSP was a bit better for that stuff. It was more closer to a PS2, whereas I think the DS was basically an N64, wasn't it?
An N64 plus, but it was really. I remember with the DS, it was. I can hear myself, Stuart. I can hear with the DS. Sorry, mate. It was more. Yeah. The games were just so marketed towards children, towards old people, towards parents. There weren't that many games that you thought, let's put on there a real gruesome, game there's going to be blood, violence, and a real adult material. That just did not exist. That was
they
just,
kind of saved that for the PSP, didn't they? Which got those games, I guess.
with the PSP, that was, the older kids had one of those.
Yeah,
Quite often the PSP was almost identical ports to the PlayStation 2 game. So
that's
it
right.
worked
Yeah.
in very close, comparison. Shall I get the PSP
Performance-wise,
version,
yeah,
or shall I get the the PlayStation 2 one? Which one shall I get?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I've got a few funny ones that did the GBA and the DS, but we're going to go back now to the 16-bit systems.
I love the
This time,
16-bit systems.
good, because this time we're going to talk about a certain 16-bit console made by Sega. Can you guess which one that is? It's not the Master System.
16-bit console made by Sega. I don't know. I don't know which one you're talking about, Trevor.
Not the Saturn. So I think you're going to say
that's 30. That's 32-bit.
That's 32 of the amount of bits that had. They counted them, didn't they? They counted the bits, and there was 32 in that. There was only 16 in this one. It's the Mega Drive.
The Mega Drive.
AKA
Do you know what?
The
An
Genesis.
interesting fact.
Yes.
On the case for a Mega Drive, it actually tells you how many bits it has inside.
It does. Like the Master System had Mega Power, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
4 Mega Power.
Anyway, what game is it, Trevor? Let's stop talking.
No, that Mega Power. Anyway, so I'm talking about.
Processing.
Yeah. Street Fighter 2 had it was a 32 megabit cartridge, 24 megabit cartridge, wasn't it? In fact, I'm holding in my hand.
Those Mega Power. It was
holding
something
the Lion
Mega
King.
Power.
Mega Power, yeah. I'm holding Lion King in my hand.
Yeah.
The Mega Drive version that actually has what we're talking about. This is 24 meg, apparently. 24 megabits. That actually translates to, I think, about 1 megabyte. So about a third of an MP3. 3-minute song in MP3 format. That's quite amazing, isn't it? They stuffed the whole. Well, that was about the standard sort of size, wasn't it? Then, yeah.
When people talk about Mega Drive games, quite often, what I like to do, it sounds a bit mean actually. What I like to do is, if they say game, my first question, how many Mega Power did that have? And they'll think about it and they'll give me a serious answer. Then they'll tell me about another game.
Wait a minute, you're getting that off GameSack, aren't you?
Yeah, because they talk about Mega Power all the time. We love GameSack. Yeah. So I keep on asking the same person, that game, how many Mega Power has that got? So they'll tell me. And then I'll ask them again. And they'll go, what is he talking about? Stop asking about Mega Power.
And you sell games, don't you? You say, someone says, right, I want FIFA 17. What's the difference between this and 16? And you say, well, this one's, I think it's about 30 Mega Power. Whereas FIFA 16 is like 29 Mega Power.
I'd say it's got 9 Mega Power out of 10.
And you're like, and then like, how do you know how many Mega Power? And you take the discount. And you look at the back, the shiny bit. And you're like, well, what you can do is with a microscope, you can count the Mega Power inside it, and that's how where the textures are stored and everything. So it's like you can see here, there's about 30 roughly 30 Mega Power. But a game that had lots of Mega Power, and due to frames of animation.
Told us what the game is yet. Are you about to tell us?
I'm going to, because it's going to.
Let's get there. Come on, people are waiting.
Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3.
Yes. Oh my God, that had how many Mega Power?
Does anybody know? I don't know. But yeah, it was Wikipedia? A lot. So it was interesting because I remember being a Mortal Kombat fan. You got Mortal Kombat 3 came out, right? And that came out on everything apart from the Sega Saturn because the Sony had an exclusivity deal on Mortal Kombat 3. But but it was on the Mega Drive.
Yeah.
I'm holding. What am I holding for?
What? Sorry. According to Wikipedia.
Is this an interesting fact?
According to Wikipedia, which is never.
Interesting facts. I've got to do the theme song. Stuart's interesting facts. Right, go.
It is on the Saturn.
Wait a minute. I didn't say. I said Mortal Kombat 3, not Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Okay.
No, I'm on the page for Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3.
That's on the Sega Saturn, but Mortal Kombat 3 is not on the Sega Saturn.
I interrupted you. I'll shut up.
You telling me you thought Mortal Kombat 3 was on the Saturn when actually it's Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is on the Saturn?
Yeah. And
you own a retro video game shop, Stu. Someone's walking out of there.
I don't know everything, Trevor.
Yeah. Okay. You can imagine all those people you've sent to the store thinking, Stu, you got that Mortal Kombat 3 for the Saturn? Yeah, I've got loads, mate. Come in.
Come in.
And they have Ultimate. I don't want Ultimate, mate. What's this? Anyway,
Oh,
so it came out.
can I tell you a fact? Can I tell you a fact?
Wait.
It came out.
No,
on the Game
you can't say it. You can't say it. You can't say it.
What?
Stuart's interesting facts. Now you can do it.
Okay, on the Game Boy Advance, I don't know what they managed to do with it, but GameSpot gave it 2.9 out of 10.
Yeah.
So on
Mortal
everything
Kombat
else, it was really, really good,
Yeah.
except for the Game Boy Advance, where
Yeah,
I
it was
think
pretty
they
bad.
just messed it up a bit.
There's a very good DS version as well, actually, called Ultimate Mortal Kombat, which is you should look up.
Yes.
But yeah, it came out on the Mega Drive. So we had like Mortal Kombat 3 came out on the Mega Drive, the plain Mortal Kombat 3, sort of in '95, and the Super Nintendo and even the Game Boy. There was even a Game Gear version, and then it came out on the PlayStation. And then the following year, because I mentioned this exclusivity thing that Sony had on Mortal Kombat 3, the Saturn got Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Which was so you had Mortal Kombat 3 in the arcade and consoles. Then there was an arcade Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, which added some more characters, some extra. There was something called a Brutality, which is a new fatality that came in, and a few extra sort of like Easter eggs and all that. The Saturn got that because Sony's exclusivity didn't include that. Well, it wasn't even out, so I don't think they could have got it. So that got that. But then you thought, to be honest, again, we weren't looking for another Mortal Kombat on the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. We were quite happy with, well, we got 3. It's dying now. 16-bit consoles are dying. That's probably going to be it. But no, we got Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and it's actually quite good. In fact, it adds things that are in Mortal Kombat Trilogy that aren't in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 in the arcade.
Really?
Yeah, there's some Rain and Ermac. And I think Rain is in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, but Ermac isn't in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 in the arcade, but is in Trilogy. But Ermac is in the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. It's pretty good. It's got a huge amount of characters. I don't think it actually... right, I've got to Wikipedia this now because I'm going to say stuff and I'm going to annoy people if I forget stuff. So, as I say, it includes some characters that aren't in the arcade version. It does miss. There is some speech missing to make way for that stuff.
Yeah,
and it looks very similar to Mortal Kombat 3. So there's very small sprites and things like that. So I'm looking at the actual the details of it. So the Mega Drive has more stages over the SNES version. Funnily enough, there are 5 new stages that are from Mortal Kombat 3 and the ones from Mortal Kombat 3. And animalities have been removed. Apparently, Rain and Noob Saibot were given a Brutality, but no other finishing moves. And that sounds like, Noob. What we got here? Oh, it also includes a rendition of Pong entitled MK4, which is the same one that appeared in the Mega Drive port of Mortal Kombat 3. So yeah, that was quite a surprise.
Did it have any extra chips or anything in the cartridge to run it, or?
No, not at all. It's just running on a vanilla cartridge. There's no support chips. I can imagine it's a very big cartridge in terms of its capacity. Like we're talking about the Mega Powers. This is probably all the Mega Powers. So I think the biggest carts were 32 meg. I think there were 32 meg. I think was the biggest carts. So I think it was probably going to be one of them. Yeah, and it came out in November 1996 in Europe. So right at the end
of
the Mega Drive. That is late. So Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 on both the SNES and the Mega Drive. I'm particularly fond of the Mega Drive version. Not cheap as well. I don't know if have you seen that in your store?
I must have done, but I think it's one of those things that would come in, and I'm showing my lack of knowledge regarding Mortal Kombat games. But I think I would be very, Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate one. Oh, right, okay, let's stick it on the shelf and not maybe appreciate it, because with fighting games, I talked about Street Fighter 2 and the Alpha games. I quite enjoyed that. I've never been an aficionado. I've never been good at them, so I think I might just be a little bit.
I think you probably got a lot of copies of just Mortal Kombat 3.
Yes,
I think people would have still been 16-bit consoles would have still been the mainstream when that came out the year before. But by 1996, I think everybody had just moved en masse to PlayStations and Saturns. So I think it is a bit more sought after. Not rare, but more sought after. So you end up paying a wee bit more than you would. Obviously, the SNES version, you get the Nintendo tax on it, so you pay a little bit more for that. But the Mega Drive version is actually better.
Let's go on to my next game. I'm going to say Settlers on the DS.
Settlers, the Amiga game.
Yeah, the Amiga game, and I loved this on the Amiga. I played it on the PC, and it's one of those games that I played it for 10 hours straight. Then I left it on for another 10 hours. Got up and I played it again. It was an absolutely brilliant game. Sort of managing all your resources and just attacking other people, taking over the map, and
that's what it is, isn't it? For the benefit of people that don't know, yeah.
It was a really, really good game, and there's a lot to it. So when I found out that Settlers, it was 2, was coming out on the DS, I thought, wow, that's brilliant. I can play it, portable mode. And to be honest, it did look really good. I just think the screen was a little bit too small. So all the other games, I've really just slated them that I've chosen. No, they ruined it. They didn't do a great job. I think they did a good job with this, but I think it was a little bit held back by the controls and all of that really. So,
and it used the touchscreen presumably to help with the management, the resource management.
It used the touchscreen, yeah. So when you're used to having a big sort of computer monitor, going on to playing that game on a I don't know what the screen size is for a DS, probably 200,
isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, about 300 by 300 pixels, maybe something like that. It just didn't feel quite right. So I've since played it on
quite cramped on the screen, all the menus and everything.
That's right. Yeah, you use the top screen quite well, because you'd play it on the bottom screen, and the top screen would have all the status and the menus and all, I don't know, other bits and bobs. But I tend to.
It's funny actually. I've got the resolution here of the DS screen.
What is it?
256 by 192 pixels. So yeah, quite small for a game that would need a lot of icons and menus and things.
That's right, yeah. And there's a hell of a lot going on with it, and But
did they try and change the the style? Was it all like sort of manga-y and all that stuff? Did they keep the same kind of in terms of the graphics, the look of the original?
Memory, I think they're trying to keep it as to the original as they could. But I think if I was playing it now, I imagine they took out quite a few things. I imagine they're much smaller maps. Things
looking
like
at
that,
it,
really.
Screenshots of it on the interwebs, it looks quite similar to the original. Yeah, same sort of isometric view, really the same, even similar looking icons. So yeah, I think they did try to keep true to the original, which doesn't always happen.
Well, they had a great game there. So I think it was actually Settlers 2. I'll put DS. Yeah, Settlers 2 they remade for the DS rather than, but they called it the Settlers because that's what everyone sort of remembered. But it was all based on the second game in the series.
Cool. So those strategy games are quite interesting, aren't they? Yeah.
Maybe it was the DS version. Anyway, I'm not sure, but I remember it not being quite right. No, it looks like the original version here.
Yeah. So based on the Amiga sort of / PC.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. All right, moving on.
A couple of strategy games there then, because normally you wouldn't have on a console. So we've got the Settlers and SimCity 2000. So going back to the 16-bit again, and we're back on the Mega Drive now. This is a particular favourite of mine because of the just how they achieved this and how unexpected it was. It's just it's up there with being probably the most unlikely port, and that's Virtua Racing on the Mega Drive. Did you play that, Stu?
Well, I would have played it all those years ago, but I wasn't strong enough to lift up the cartridge because it was so big.
It was bigger, wasn't it? It kind of did the same. So, Virtua Racing was an arcade game originally, and and it was a real cutting edge arcade game that used the absolute best, most powerful hardware that was around at the time to make a 3D polygonal racing game in a complete 3D environment. That was actually very good, very fun to play as well, and absolutely blew you away in the arcade when you saw it. So for Sega to sort of condense that down onto a Mega Drive looked like that was something that probably would be completely impossible. But they managed to do it, and they did it with the help of a support chip, again, like the Super Nintendo. Although support chips weren't a thing on the Mega Drive, were they?
No, from memory, that was the only game that I really remember having it.
I think it is the only game.
Trevor, can you hear any hoovering going on?
I can. Are you hoovering while you're doing this now?
No. My better
missus.
half is hoovering. So it stopped now. Hoovering stopped.
Gonna get evils now.
I think I told this to someone, and I'm not sure how true this is. I don't really think it's that true. But basically, I think what I told him was the cartridge is basically a 32X in there as well. So when you put the game in, it's almost got all the power of a 32X and the game in there as well in one little cartridge. And I think I made that up.
It's not far behind, to be fair. If you look
I think there's a little bit of truth.
It's a semi truth. What it is it's got something called the SVP chip inside it, and that stands for the Sega Virtua Processor. And that is basically, again, just like the Super FX chip inside the Super Nintendo cartridges, like we talked about Doom earlier had that. It is actually a lot more powerful than the Super FX chip, and it's just it's a basic graphic accelerator, and it runs at 23 megahertz,
Wow.
which is quite impressive compared to the 7, which is what the Mega Drive is by default. And it basically allows it to render a lot more polygons than what a basic Mega Drive would be able to do on its own, and a lot more than what the Super FX chip can do. In fact, there's a great comparison on SegaRetro.org, which is a great wiki for Sega stuff, where they compare the Super FX chip to the Sega the SVP chip. So there's an example here in terms of the polygon performance. So apparently a Mega Drive on its own, without any support chips, can do 1,000 polygons a second textured, which is amazing, isn't it? When you think like an Xbox One or a PS4 can do hundreds of millions a second. There's probably about 1,000 polygons in the finger of a FIFA player. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was just saying, I thought just quite a good comparison. Very early on in the Mega Drive's lifespan, there was a game called Hard Driving, and that was all polygons and things like that. So if you compare Hard Driving, which was, I think I can be very fair in saying this, was god awful, and then you compare that to Virtua Racing,
it's a different
really
planet,
night and day.
There was a few polygonal 3D games on the Mega Drive in the early days. There was a lot of flight sims. There was a F-29, MiG-29. There was a LHX attack copter. There was actually a few, mainly EA, flight sims, 3D polygonal flight sims. So the base hardware, the Mega Drive could do 1,000 polygons. The Super Nintendo could do 140. And this is probably because the Mega Drive had a faster CPU than the Super Nintendo. But with that's the blast processing. So with the SVP chip versus the Super FX chip, the Super FX is 10 megahertz. The SVP is 23, and it can do 20,000 flat shaded polygons, and the Super FX can do 2,000 flat shaded polygons. So you could have done a version of Doom on the Mega Drive with the SVP chip, and it might have been a bit better. There'll be a bit more room for it to,
it's going a little bit off topic here, or maybe not. Do you know the guy Jason Heine off? He does YouTube videos.
Rings a bell.
Yeah, well, he did this quite interesting. Or he's telling us all about it. Or he did a video or something. It's on YouTube. I'm sure it is. And basically, he got opened up a Star Fox game and then put in there a new some sort of crystal or
I know where you're going.
some valve or something to up the game
Overclock.
To basically overclock the game. And it's quite funny because he did it once and then he goes, he put a too powerful chip in there and he basically blew the cartridge, nothing worked. So he thought, well, I can't update it to 20 megahertz. That's just too much power. So I'll overclock it to 15 megahertz. So he put this chip in, put it all back together, popped in his machine, and then he was playing Star Fox like 20% faster than anyone else who's playing Star Fox, and it worked.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it renders about 15 frames a second, I think, by default.
Yeah.
The Star Fox, but there's videos on YouTube where people have overclocked the Super FX chip, and it's gone from 10 megahertz to 4 or 5, 6 more megahertz on top of that, and you can get about 20 frames a second. But it is amazing the difference it makes as to how it feels to play a game like that. It's a lot more responsive when you're getting more frames chucked at you. And people do it to the Mega Drive as well. I don't know about the SVP chip, but people overclock the Mega Drive from like 7 megahertz to 10. And if you've got a game like a shoot 'em up, which has a lot of sprites on screen that can make things flicker a little bit or slow down, it eliminates that. But there are games that it might not work with. Games that are really closely tied to the CPU speed might go a bit glitchy and might stop working completely. So yeah, look it up. It's fascinating what these guys do when they overclock games consoles. But go back to Virtua Racing. They basically managed to get a sort of condensed version of the arcade Virtua Racing onto the Mega Drive. And it did everything the arcade did. Obviously, there was far less polygons. It was a lower resolution, and frame rate wise, it's a bit choppy. It's about 15, 20 frames a second, but it plays really well. You've got all the amazing 3D views. It's smooth enough to play, and it's just something that resembles fairly well the arcade game, but on a £100 console. An arcade machine that would have cost £10,000 in 1993.
I think that's fair in saying it's one of those games where actually you can tell it's the home version of the game, but when you're playing it, you're okay. Well, home versions aren't as good as the arcade ones. We're not in some world where we expect the identical gameplay experience as you get from the arcade. When you play a home conversion, okay, it's not going to look quite as nice. It's not going to do this. It's not going to do that. But you understand why, and that was a great example of the game that came out, and they really pushed the hardware, as far as they possibly could for the Mega Drive, which probably came out 7-8 years earlier.
Yeah, 1989, so it would have been like 5 years old by the time that came out. And it's actually a shame, because Sega were considering having a separate SVP chip cartridge that you could then plug in, basically like a 32X. But this would have been a lot cheaper because the SVP chip, they could have produced it cheap because it wasn't quite as powerful. But I think instead of having the 32X, they should have just maybe put more R&D into the SVP chip, and you could have got probably kind of a basic Virtua Fighter running on it. You could have got
well, they did. Virtua Fighter 2 came out on the Mega Drive.
It did, yeah.
But that was on a standard chip, and from memory, I didn't really play it, but it almost looked sort of faux 2D, if that makes sense. There was a little bit of scaling or something, but
it was sprites, wasn't it? There was no polygons or anything. It was just like Street Fighter 2. It was all right though. All the same combos kind of worked, and it was kind of felt the same a little bit, but it wasn't. It wasn't the same.
No.
But yeah, with this, if they maybe focused on the SVP chip, and if they did actually release a separate SVP, maybe like a pass-through kind of cartridge that had the chip inside it, like Sonic and Knuckles, you could get sort of SVP enhanced games for a bit cheaper. You buy the SVP chip on its own for like 50 quid. And then you buy the SVP enhanced games. Maybe they run on a regular without the SVP cartridge, pass-through cartridge, but they're just missing a few features, kind of like the expansion pack on the N64. But
that's right, yeah.
They could have, boosted the life of the Mega Drive without going through all of these. Basically going through the pain of the 32X. You could have, even like a game like Mortal Kombat 2, you might have been able to have a few more colors, and it could run faster, and you could maybe enhance the music. I think they should have just focused on that and made more SVP games. But yeah, alas, we will never know what could have been with Sega. They were a bunch of kind of numpties a little bit in that era. They killed themselves. The architects of their own downfall, weren't they, in the end?
A little bit, yeah.
So we got one more, Stu. We'll do one
I've
more.
got one more. Actually,
Yeah.
This is quite a funny one, 'cause I've never played this, but it's one of those things I love looking at. There's a guy called Retro Core, and he does all these videos where they're about 20 minutes long, and the first game he'll play is the let's say the arcade version, and then he'll play the Amiga, then he'll play the Saturn version, then he'll play the Super Nintendo version, and then he'll get down towards the end, he'll play Spectrum versions, Commodore 64 versions of games. So I saw one of his videos, I'm pretty sure this is where I saw it, of Double Dragon. And of course, Double Dragon came out on everything, the NES, the Mega Drive, I even want to say the Amiga, Spectrum, Commodore 64, loads of different machines. But where I think they really managed to, I think, some programmers worked absolute wonders to get it playing on this machine, was the Atari 2600. So Double Dragon came out on the Atari 2600, and I never played it, so I can't go, oh, well, I remember playing that, it was really choppy, it was really this, it was really that. But I have seen screenshots, and it's like, oh yeah, that's Double Dragon. Yeah, that's I know what I'm looking at. I know what I've got to do. So I think it's
Gameplay-wise,
really,
it's fairly accurate.
Yeah, I imagine it only had one button. I imagine it was a bit clunky. Didn't quite have the atmosphere of even the NES game, but overall, good effort.
Yeah, I mean, the blockiness of the Atari 2600. Obviously, there'd be a lack of colours. Actually, I'm looking at a video of it now. It's very much like very, very blocky, and it looks like there's about 4 colours. And there's no scrolling when you walk past the screen. Instead of the background moving with you as it does like the NES versions or any other version, you move into another screen. It just cuts to another screen that you walk into. Because the Atari 2600 can do scrolling. Can it do scrolling? I was about to say Pitfall. Pitfall doesn't scroll either, does it?
No, but if you imagine things like Defender and stuff, they're scrolling, aren't they? Surely. Or is that close scrolling with just?
There's obviously a trick, isn't there, that they did to get it to sort of almost look like it. But yeah, you kind of walk around, you punch guys. I mean, it seems like you only get a couple on screen at once, but the principles are there. So there's even weapons get dropped, so you can pick them up and hit them with it. So yeah,
I'll tell you a funny story. Have you heard about that new Double Dragon 4?
Yeah,
and it's everyone's. No, I think it's a proper game for the the PC and stuff, but it's made in the same style as Double Dragon 1 on the NES. Where it's still got all the little the faults that one had, where they'll get you into a corner and things like that. And it looks like the NES version, but on the PC, and I don't know if that's quite the right way of going about doing a new Double Dragon game. Is just all the faults it had before, let's keep those in to make it as authentic as we can.
Best Double Dragon is Double Dragon 2 on the PC Engine CD.
Really?
Freaking awesome, yeah. So obviously most people are familiar with Double Dragon 2 from probably the NES version, although it was on the Mega Drive as well. But the PC Engine got its own enhanced version of it, which is by far the best version, even better than the arcade version. And it's got a really good soundtrack. Obviously, it only came out in Japan because we didn't get the PC Engine here at all. Although it wasn't even, I don't think it even came out in America on the Turbo graphics, which is the American version of the PC Engine. But yeah, if you're looking at a really good, or maybe the best sort of 8/16-bit Double Dragon, I would hunt down the PC Engine Double Dragon 2 CD on the PC Engine CD. It is really, really good. That's another good port. So yeah, so that's a good one, Stuart. Actually,
yeah, no, it's, Yeah, thought about that earlier on today. I was
Yeah.
sitting at my desk.
So what is that? What you
Okay.
think about on your desk then? 2,600 games.
Well, I do a little
Must
bit.
have been
Well, when it
bored.
comes up, well, I know I'm doing a podcast later on. That's what I think about. Yeah.
I suppose that would help. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, I've got one final one. So I'm going to go on the. Let's go to the Commodore 64, and this also would have been in the sort of the twilight years of the Commodore 64. And it's Speedball 2. Now you're a fan of Speedball 2, aren't you, Stu?
Ooh. It was one of those games, when you're about 7 and you're playing it, and the thing you like about it is not actually playing the football game or throwing the ball around to score, because you weren't very good at that.
Yeah.
What you liked doing was being a little bit annoying and punching other people.
Yeah.
That was the way I think I played Speedball 2.
Well, that was half the fun, easily, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was smacking into people, grabbing the silver ball, and then trying to score a goal with it by throwing it into the goal. So obviously, the most famous version is the Amiga version, and it was ported over to other platforms as well. I mean, an interesting one that is actually not this one that I'm about to talk about is the Sega Master System version. There is actually a Sega Master System version of Speedball 2, and it is actually very good and looks quite close to the Amiga version. There's also a Mega Drive version, which is very good. In fact, there's not really a bad version of it. There was also a Game Boy and I think also Atari ST as well. But the Commodore 64 version came out around 1992. And I played it a couple of weeks ago, thinking it was going to be some horrible... There was a habit, wasn't there, where a company would make sort of an Amiga version of a game, then they'd sort of outsource a port of it for the Commodore 64 to another team who couldn't really do it justice. Not necessarily it was their fault. There was maybe the limitations of the Commodore 64 were a bit too much to overcome, and you'd get a fairly bad version of a game, of an Amiga game. But this is really good. So obviously it looks a bit blockier than what you have on the Amiga. The sprites are a bit smaller, but everything is there. It just loads off a single tape, and it's just one load as well. So it's not like, you get to the title screen, you choose your match, and then it loads again for another minute. It's literally all from one load. It's got all the modes from the Amiga version. Nothing has really been cut down, and you don't really have to adjust to the Commodore 64 version. If you just come off the Amiga game, you better jump straight in and play the Commodore 64 version. It plays exactly the same speed, same techniques work. Everything is exactly the same. It might be one of the best Commodore 64 ports of an Amiga game.
I'm actually looking at a video now, and
if you look at it,
it does look really good.
It looks good. Obviously, it's a bit, like I said, blockier, and it's not as colourful. But gameplay-wise, if you dig out a C64 emulator or a real Commodore 64, and give it a go, I don't know if you might even have it in your shop. I'm not sure how common it is actually. I think I've seen a few pop up on eBay. The Amiga version is like common as muck, isn't it? Because that's the most famous version. But it does pop up on eBay, I think, every now and then. But you don't tend to see it for very cheap. Not in a box, anyway. Probably because it was a late game. I think that and couple that with Alien 3 for the Commodore 64. That got a 64 conversion. That's also very good. And very similar to the Mega Drive Alien 3. That's another quick one to mention. Look that up on YouTube as well. And also give that a go.
This does look so good.
Speedball.
Yeah.
It looks great, yeah. Check it out. If you grab yourself a copy or get an emulator and give it a go, and you'll see it literally plays exactly the same as the Amiga version. And it looks pretty good as well. One of the more surprising ones. I think it came out around 1992. So yeah, really, really good. One of the better Commodore 64 games in general. In fact, in my opinion. I think that's all of them. Then I think we've hit an hour now. Everyone's getting bored, and we have to go and eat and see our families. So thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you very much.
We're going to be back. we're going to be back again. Again, we're sticking fairly well, aren't we, Stu, to our 2-week sort of promise, I think.
2 weeks, yeah. I think what we're trying to do is we're still a little bit behind on getting all the podcasts onto iTunes, because I don't just want to list, dump loads of them on there. So once you hear this one, hopefully the next one will be out as soon as we do it. So once they're actually out, as soon as they come out, we're going to talk about a little bit more about, gaming news at the same time. So you're not going to hear us going, oh, have you heard about the Switch announcement? And you'll be going, what Switch announcement? It's been out for a month, and things like that. So
going to keep up.
Hopefully, once they're all up to date, and at the moment we're releasing sort of like one a week, so we'll soon catch up with ourselves, and should be good.
We're looking to have another guest, hopefully on our next show.
The GameSack guys, aren't we? Guys from GameSack.
Maybe not. Expect maybe the not of that. You never know, though. We might be able to get them on. We'll try. We'll certainly try.
Brilliant.
We're going to try. We're hopefully going to line up a few more guests. We've certainly got one upcoming. We can't reveal who. Again, maybe. Should be quite. This stuff. And we'll be back again with another episode in a couple of weeks. And just to remind
I'll give you a little clue about who the next person is we're going to have on. Okay, he's the man behind the Metal Gear games. Yeah,
it is.
Stuart. Okay, I know it's a bit of a cryptic clue there.
It's not. Stop doing this. You're going to give us a bad reputation. We're going to have some words on there that no one's heard of, and they'll be like, what the hell? So, don't listen to any of Stu's lies. We're not. Hideo Kojima isn't coming on the next show. He's actually in a few weeks. So, don't get too carried away yet. You never know. We never know. You can never say never. So, we've got the website now, Console Shock. .net, wasn't it?
Consoleshock.net. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube.
I've got iTunes as well.
iTunes. Oh, I've put us on Stitcher. So if you're on an Android phone, you can find us on Stitcher as well. So please hit the subscribe button. Oh, I always hear people say, give us a review on iTunes. Apparently that's a review on stuff. And also, if you go to the website and then if you put a comment on there, it'll be really good, because we haven't got any comments on there. The only ones we get seem to be from sort of people wanting to sell us Facebook likes. I don't want Facebook. I don't want fake Facebook likes. I want people to come on there and say, oh, I like what you said about that. That's a bit wrong. Or you should have said this. Say stuff like that. That's what we want to hear. Yeah. I don't want someone called Cassandra selling me Facebook likes because they've happened to just come across the website.
We get it. So
I don't want that. I don't want it.
This is really what happens on Stu's Playnation Games Facebook. He's just transferring it over to Console Shop. He probably gets a lot of unsolicited stuff. Anyway,
no, I don't mind that. I do, but I think on the website, I just everyone's got really bored now. Put some comments, because you'll be the first ones to comment.
And kindly click the like button if you liked our show, and even click the dislike button if you thought it was shit. So thanks again, guys. We're going to be back again in a couple of weeks with another episode, and we'll see you again soon.
Westlife.
Bye.